The Sigma 50-100 was released in 2016 and was an intriguing lens as it was more expensive than its companion lens, the Sigma 18-35, but promised very similar quality for a great price. I waited this long to purchase the lens because I already had a telephoto lens that worked really well in my ecosystem, which that lens happens to be Canon 70-200, which was extremely popular with sports and documentary filmmakers for many years. However, as of late, I stopped filming sports, and in my documentary work, I noticed that I really filmed mostly in that 50-100 focal range. The ability to have somewhat of a telephoto lens and be able to shoot wide open at f1.8 on APS-C or Super 35 sensors is something that I felt could help in certain situations, especially when I wanted that shallow depth of field. More of a shallow depth of field than I could achieve with Canon 70-200. So at the time I had on my hands earlier this year, I decided to pick one of these up. I had a few commercials scheduled that I wanted to test the lens on. Today, I'm going to review the lens that I've had for around 6 or 7 months and felt that it was enough time to give my opinion on this beast of a lens and hopefully help you decide whether it's something you would like to add to your arsenal. Let's hit it. Hey everybody, and welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Geoff Fagien. I'm a filmmaker and director of photography based in South Florida, and this is a channel where I talk a lot about things in the life of a filmmaker, whether it's camera gear, computer technology, anything related to filmmaking. So if that's something that you're interested in, please help out by hitting that like, subscribe button, and notification bell to keep up to date with the latest videos. So straight to the point, the Sigma 50-100 is no slouch. Having an aperture of 1.8 is just incredible on a telephoto lens, even though it only reaches from 50 to 100. I had originally picked this lens up to use more for talking heads in my documentary and corporate work, but I ended up using it for a lot more, specifically B-roll. With this lens, it delivers incredible quality, and being able to shoot at 1.8 and getting that super crisp shallow depth of field on the go is really great. As you've probably heard, one of the downsides to this lens is the immense breathing that's exhibited when pulling focus. Now, I have noticed that when I'm doing slight focus pulls, it's not really that big of a deal, but when you're doing major focus racks, you'll definitely notice the breathing. But simply put, if you have a lot of work that can use this lens, even though it's almost double the price of the 18-35, that can easily be recouped if not in 1 gig, a few gigs, or even a single project. I bought this lens to use with my Komodo, and for the most part have really only used it with that camera, as that's what I've used to shoot most of the commercials, at least over the past 6 months. The reason I bought it was, even though it's for APS-C lenses, like the Sigma 18-35, it tends to work really well on Super 35 cameras. So not only could I use it on my Komodo, but I could also use it on my Pocket 6K, even my Pocket 4K with a Speedbooster. Now, with all the positive compliments I'm giving this lens, there is another negative, and that really is, besides the focus breathing, it is a very heavy lens. So it always really needs to be supported. If you're handheld, you can support it with your hands, but if you're not handheld and you're going to be using it on a tripod and using it with something like a Komodo, it absolutely needs support. Although the 50-100 has a tripod collar, with cameras like the Komodo, I wouldn't necessarily recommend dangling it off the end of the lens itself. But if you're using something like a bare bones Pocket 6K or 4K and just using the internal battery, that's a little bit different, as those cameras are a lot lighter, and I believe that the 50-100 can handle the weight from those lenses. But when you start adding things like a battery grip or a cage or external battery accessories, then I probably wouldn't dangle a Pocket off the back of the 50-100 either. The front filter thread is 82mm, which is somewhat unfortunate for me, as most of my lenses are 72mm or less, so I did have to buy some new screw-on filters, as I typically use screw-on filters more than typical 4x465 filters, as it just is easier for me to travel with. One of the things that did save me though is with the Komodo, I use Canon's variable ND filter adapter, and that saved me from having to buy a variable ND filter for the 50-100. One of the things I did have to buy though was an IR cut UV filter, because if you know anything about Canon's VND, there is a lot of IR pollution, which using an IR cut UV filter helps. If you want to learn more about that, I actually have a video about it that I'll put in the description below and in the card above. Another really cool feature of this lens that I actually had no clue when I purchased it is the compatibility with the lens extenders from Canon. I was able to use my 1.4 times and 2 times extenders and get a lot more use out of this lens. In instances where maybe I actually do want to shoot a little bit of sports, or I just need a little bit more of a focal range that I didn't have without the extenders, and it made me really happy that I could actually use them and get great quality out of this lens. Lastly, one of the things I want to discuss is something I didn't discuss, which is autofocus. And that's because, quite frankly, I have not touched it once, as most of my cameras don't have autofocus. And for the commercials I have worked on with the Komodo, I manually pulled focus on all of them. So that's one area I can't really speak to with this lens. However, overall, I have been extremely happy with this lens. And if you need a very sharp lens with a shallow depth of field for documentary interviews, B-roll, product footage, anything where you need a telephoto lens with an extremely shallow depth of field and you're not shooting on a full frame camera, this lens is an absolute must to have in your camera bag. If you have any questions about this lens, or there's maybe something I didn't go over that you wanted to know more about, please make sure to ask in the comments section below. And if you got value out of today's video, please make sure to hit that like, subscribe, and notification bell to keep up with more videos like this from the channel. Until next time, my name is Geoff Fagien. Thank you for watching, everybody, and I will see you in the next video.